I'm Denise Carnihan, and I am the founder of Helping Hand African Tours and Safaris. I take small group, authentic, immersive experiences in East Africa. I focus on Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And we have a primary school in Kenya, my husband and I, that's 9 years old tomorrow. And all of my itineraries include a visit to our school.
Is it just by luck that we're talking so close to the anniversary of the project school?
Crazy, isn't it? I know, it's crazy. And every year rolls around, and I look back, and I was thinking this morning actually just how far we've come from what we started. It was a very, very tiny, very small beginning. I think we started with no more than 20 children. And we were in a little rented, derelict old building that we'd rented. And here we are now, 9 years later. We have 160 kids, roughly. We have our own land. So we've moved the school, and it's in its forever home. And yeah, it's just amazing. It's been a huge journey, but we're here.
It really is a journey, and 9 years is certainly that's a commitment. And so let's be sure to talk more about the school.
Okay,
but let's start off about you. I think it would be interesting for people to know who they're listening to. So let's talk about, who is Denise? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? What's your story? And how did it lead you to work in travel?
Well, yes, so I'm from New Zealand, a little small coastal town called Kapiti Coast. I grew up around this region, and I guess I'm a very spontaneous person. I don't think too much before I leap. Travel has always been a passion of me and my husband's. I've got a husband of 42 years, and we have travelled quite a lot over our years together, and more so since our children, grew up and got married and lived their own lives. And so, we're back here in our little haven, I guess you call it. And I take these gorgeous tours to Africa. I'm normally away for about 3 to 4 months a year. I've never been involved with travel, ever. I didn't know the first thing about, the other end. I was always the traveller. And it was, 2016, I decided to take a tour group to Kenya. I already had a following of people because of the school, and also our involvement and passion for Kenya, particularly me. And so I was very involved with sharing all the the news and the journey, really. I wrote a book. My book's called I Share My Heart with Africa. So I had a following of people who loved hearing my stories or reading my Facebook posts or my emails every time I went back to Kenya, to check on the school. And it was 2016, over a drink with my husband at our local bar. And I said to him, I think I'll take a tour group to Kenya. And I wasn't sure if anyone would want to come. So I put a post out on my Facebook group, just my normal, personal Facebook, and said, hey, thinking about taking a tour to Kenya. We'll go to the school and we'll do all the cool things. But, I do very local, authentic, immersive stuff when I'm there. And that's what I wanted for my tours. I wanted people to see the Africa and experience the Africa that I do. So I put a post out and asked people to send me an email if they were interested in going on a database. The next morning I had 52 emails. I was quite, reassured that yes, people did want to come, and I only wanted to take maximum 8 people. So I literally threw an itinerary together based purely on my own experiences. I've got wonderful bunch of people over there who have become very close friends. So I knew I wanted to include them. I knew the things that I wanted to include in this tour, and I created it, and it was 19 days. And so I plucked a date out of thin air and thought, right, I'm going to take my tour group here on this day, and it was a 19-day trip. So I put an email out to all these 52 emails, and I had the trip booked in 24 hours.
Wow.
I thought, okay, people want to come. They actually do. So I literally did exactly the same thing in June. So the first trip was in February. And I thought, I'll do one in the middle of the year. So I did exactly the same thing, and exactly the same thing happened. It was booked out in 24 hours. And then I opened another one in September. So I had three tours in that first year. The first tour I took, I knew exactly where I was going, what I wanted to do, who I was going to be involved with, who I wanted on my team. And the co-founder of our primary school is a Kenyan, and wonderful, wonderful friend. And, he needed extra income and help because, we've got a very small charity here, and the school is run by a charity. So I thought, right, I'll get Tony on board and he can be our driver. So from day one, Tony has been with me and still is to this day. And that's how we started. And then it just kind of grew. And COVID hit. And I had 2 years of booked out trips ahead of me in 2020 and in 2021. So in March 2020, when all of this COVID thing was all, sort of on the news, I made the decision to cancel straight away. So I cancelled, refunded everything, and then I could just, go into shock. So I've just come back from my first tour since late 2019. And I wasn't sure, actually, until quite late last year, whether I was ever going to be able to take tours again. I couldn't see the whole thing reopening. I mean, where we are, we're way down the bottom of the world, and we were very much isolated here. We're just a tiny country, and we were locked in for a very, very long time, and I honestly couldn't see past that. And it wasn't till it was late last year, and I said to my husband, I actually think I might open one tour for 2023, just to see the lay of just to check it out, the lay of the land, what tourism is like, particularly in Africa. So I opened one tour, and we did Kenya and Tanzania for 3 weeks. It was perfect. Everything was perfect. And realised from then that, tourism is back. People are travelling just as they were before. I honestly did not see any difference or any changes in Kenya and Tanzania, at least. So that spurred me on to realising that, I'm back. So I've launched a whole lot of tours for next year and can't wait to get back into it. It's just my love and my big passion. And so that's where I'm at with that.
You and I have spoken before, and we were talking about several different things. And one of those things was about how important the people are that you're working with at really making the kind of experience for your guests that you want to have. And so it's really great that with your the charity project with the school, there's overlap with Tony, but that there's visibility. So tell us more about the kinds of people that you rely on with your guests when you travel, because it seems like that's such a big part of the experience.
Yeah, they are. So they're very local people. They, I have the likes of Tony, who has never been in travel in his life, just like me. He runs our school. He's the headmaster of our school, and he runs the school. And suddenly I've roped him into travel and tourism. And during that time, since we I started my tours and I dragged him on day one, he actually loved it and decided to get his guiding certificates. So during my tours, he would drive for us and then sit in his van or Jeep or whatever while we were on doing an experience or an activity or whatever. And he would study. And he studied and got his guiding certificate. I think he's got silver now, which is really amazing. He runs the school at the same time. He drives for me. And now he's just started hosting for me too as well. So on this particular trip that I've just done, I was basically a guest on my own tour. I wanted him to run the tour. Because I want him to come on board more with me. So that's Tony. So he's never been involved with tourism. I've got so many people who I just bring out of nowhere. I've got a lovely Maasai friend. He does guiding, but just walking, just in one particular area. He is just the most wonderful person, and with the kindest heart. And he just works for himself. And so I always used Joseph, his wife Maria. She has a little Maasai traditional craft stand in a local market right in the bush in Kenya. And so I always support her. I always take my groups to visit her little market. I have a guy on the coast down in Kenya who has just got a little boat and a little glass bottom boat, and he just runs just local stuff. And I always use Amos for our snorkeling trips. I've got people over there who I rope in to cook for us. I always use, as much as I can, local accommodation, particularly in Nairobi. My tours have a range. Every itinerary has a range of different accommodation depending on where we are in the environment. And for example, in the Masai Mara, we use safari camps, and I could use Airbnb. I use a local Airbnb down on the coast in Diani Beach in Kenya for a couple of my itineraries, rather than using resorts or hotels. I've been using Jimmy's property since I started my very first tour, and he's got the most incredible property down there, and I just rent it off him. We've got the whole compound to ourselves. We've got a beautiful pool. There's fabulous chefs there and staff and gardens, and we've got the whole place to ourselves. So that's another thing I do. So I try and use as many people as I can. Local safari guides. I've got friends who are guides, but they work for a company, but I hire them as individuals because there's just not enough work. I just try to use as many people, and we go to people's homes for a cup of tea if we're invited to go and meet somebody or to go and visit somebody, and we all go. And we could be just into a local house, and there's all sorts of amazing things that we do with the locals. They're all very important to me in my business.
There's a lot of talk about sustainable and regenerative tourism and how extractive tourism can be on local communities. And I mean, this is the foundation of how we fix that, is bringing in local people to be part of this whole series of events that tourists go through. And so this is where what you're providing is doing all of that really important work for a traveler who wants to go someplace and have a positive impact. That's where they need someone like you, because you make that connection possible.
All of my tours Gosh, the tour, the people that come on my tours, they leave with making new friends. And some of them to this day are still in contact with some of those guys and ladies in Kenya and Tanzania, or Uganda. And it's just what I love to do. And a great example of that is I said that Tony had studied to get his guiding license, and then he needed a vehicle. And so one of my group got together and did a whole lot of fundraising to get the deposit together for Tony to buy his vehicle, his safari vehicle. So he was able to then go to the bank and get a bank loan to buy his vehicle. And whereas before, if he would never have been able to get the deposit together. There's just no way. And the bank would never have lent him the money without any deposit. So he's on his way now. So he not only does he run our school like a well-oiled machine, he runs tours beautifully. And I just, he's just the best. And he's just somebody like me who'd never even been in tourism before, And now he's so good at it. Yeah. Yeah. And it is great the way my the members of my tour parties and that just become really good friends with those people that I'm really good friends with. Yeah, they trust them, they love them.
For people who've done multi-day trips before, it really is clear how important those people are. And when we think about trips like yours, where people are traveling, to the other side of the world, it's a real privilege to be able to travel that far and to have these kind of like really superlative experiences. And when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to have a trip to Kenya that I did with my dad. And it's amazing that I was 10. I'm now in my 40s, but I remember the name of the guide that we had in our car. I remember his name was Abraham. Like I remember this, and it's that impression that they leave. And so people who've done multi-day trips like this, particularly to developing countries where you really need that liaison, know how important it is. And if anyone's listening who has not done a multi-day trip or has not traveled to a country that's really outside of your comfort zone, there's an importance to going with someone who knows and can connect you because you'll have such an incredible experience when you're connected to the right people.
Yeah. I think that it's just, it becomes a not just an experience, but a real meaningful purpose, like traveling with purpose. It's really impactful for the people on, the local people as well. Like you've got no idea how much, well, a lot of people don't have any idea if you've never traveled there, just how much it impacts on their lives by going and supporting local, even visiting community projects. Going to like one of my projects that we visit is it's a project set up for single mums to earn a living because there's no social security system or anything. And we go and visit them. They make jewellery, the most incredible handmade jewellery from clay, right through to ends up as porcelain kind of beaded jewellery, exported all around the world now. And, even just visiting a place like that. And I know the woman really well because I've been going there with my tour groups since I started. And just to be there, to watch them, to just watch them hand painting every single bead, just rolling every single bead and doing what they have to do day in and day out. And just being there and buying something little, it doesn't have to be much, is huge for them. It's huge. And more people, travelers want that. They do want to go into those places. We go to a woodcarvers cooperative where one of the tribes in Kenya are naturally talented woodcarvers. So rather than try and make their own living by carving and trying to sell, they formed a cooperative. And I think there are about 350 carvers in this. They've come into Nairobi with their families, and they've got this big compound, and they sit and carve all day. Now, tourists don't go there. It's more, they do it for export and wholesale. And we're talking beautiful craft, the animals and ebony, elephants or whatever. And they just produce the most magnificent craft. It's incredible. And I take my tour groups there because I'm in there now, and I've got my connections there, and it's just fantastic. And just, we're only a small group, but we still managed to make an impact. The trip that I've just done, I think we spent a couple of $1,000s between everybody on the trip who wanted to buy something to bring home, or, one of the women on my tour bought a massive giraffe, which she's now struggling to get, here because of the freight costs. So I think she's coming on another tour of mine next year. So she's going to pick it up and bring it home physically. But yeah, I mean, it's just huge, huge impact. And yeah, it's just though there's so many of those kind of projects around, Next year I've opened a women's tour just for ladies. We do love men, but this is just for ladies. We're doing all sorts of cool stuff, immersive experiences. Like we're doing a traditional Maasai bead workshop, beading jewelry workshop. This is a Maasai necklace, all beaded. So we're doing a workshop there. We're going to visit a village, a women's only village that was set up by one lady from the Samburu tribe who had escaped, bad marriage and abuse and what have you. And she set up a village just for women and as a safe haven for women and their children escaping, marriages and abuse and all sorts of things. And we're going to stay there. It's just so cool. Things like that are really, there's just so many cool things there, and so many people don't even know about them, what goes on over there, So that's really cool as well. Yeah.
It is really interesting because I think sometimes we always fall into this narrative that we all share being in really developed countries where there are common problems that societies around the world face. And in developed countries, we've come up with, really neatly packaged solutions to so many things. But in developing countries, they sometimes are coming up with very innovative solutions to problems. And that sounds like one of them. And so we go to some of these places, and it's important for travelers to take a step back and realize you're not taking a step down when you go to a developing country. You're actually taking a very big step where you could be, very inspired by what you see people doing. You're going to learn a lot from the experience.
Exactly. And, that stems right back to the little kids in our school and some of the things that they come up with and develop and make, and just, they just improvise, and they're so good at it. And I'll never forget this. Years ago, I went to, way before my tours, right at the beginning of my African love, I guess, I was in Kenya for 3 months doing some voluntary work, and I was in an orphanage and for a month, and they had a sewing class there, dressmaking class, and I'm a dressmaker, and I thought, right, I'll go over there and I'll teach the girls and boys how to sew or, make something. I tell you not, kid you not, I could not believe what I walked into. And we're talking mainly girls. We had a couple of boys, and I think they were still over their primary level, but they would have been probably 12 to 13, 14. And they had been sewing sugar sacks, because they couldn't afford fabric. And so the orphanage had access to sugar sacks, which are like hard, paper, really coarse paper. And they made entire garments out of sugar sacks. I'm talking jackets with pockets. They had skirts, dresses, trousers, all made out of sugar sacks, just that was their lesson. Obviously they weren't wearing them, but that's how they made clothes. And I could not believe it. And I remember I decided to buy a whole lot of fabric and let these kids make something real that they could wear. They chose exactly what they wanted. And then we did a fashion parade. And, these kids had never had anything, they'd never experienced dressmaking or sewing with using proper fabric. And this was a first for them. And I tell you, incredible. And really put me in my place in this whole first world thing, thinking you're going to go over there and change everything. Never. It's just amazing. They're just so clever and innovative, and yeah, they have to be. And they do teach us things. It's not the other way around, And when we built the school, or founded the school, and our whole concept was that it was a Kenyan school. It was not for us to go in there and all thinking we're all gung-ho and teach them how a school should be run the Western way. No way. It was the other way around. We were the ones told, that were told what to do. Tony, who founded the school with us, was absolutely incredible, and we've learnt from him, not the other way around. Amazing.
Let's actually talk more about the school, because it is an interesting thing that the school actually came first, right? In the timeline. So let's talk about the school. Like, how did this come about? What's the mission? Where's this going?
So I'd been doing my voluntary work, as I said, in the orphanage that year, and then I moved to a teenage boy detention centre. And it was detention. The kids there, they were 11-year-olds to 19. They were put in the detention centre for various reasons. And I was volunteering there. And when I was first planning on my voluntary stint, back in 2010, I went. My husband wasn't that keen to come, because at that point I was just going to be in an orphanage, and he thought, no, I've done the baby thing. So off I went. When I moved to the teenage boy detention centre, he was suddenly very interested and really thought that would be a cool place. He felt that he could really, add some value there. So the following year, 2011, we both went back, and we were going to be working at the detention centre. We were there for probably 3 days, and one of the teachers that I had been got friendly with the year before at the detention centre, I organised to have lunch with him, and so he could meet my husband Chris, and vice versa, because they'd both heard about each other. And we had lunch, and when Ayub left that day, I said to Chris, wouldn't it be cool if we could build a little school? 50 kids. We could do that. How hard could it be? That could be and we could fund it. That'll be our contribution to helping out long term. And before we knew it, we had roped our friend Ayub in, found a plot of land to rent in a large slum out of Nairobi. And within 24 hours, we had the start of a building. And 2 months to the day after we sort of came up with this idea, the school opened. It was never 50 kids. There were 117 on opening day. 6 months later, there were 300, and 9 months later, there were 400, and a whole pile of teachers that we didn't know existed. Meanwhile, we had no idea how many kids were at the school or what had happened until I went back, and then it all just exploded. So from that, we had our own kids. Felt sorry for mum and dad that suddenly their little charity project of 50 children and 2 staff that they were going to fund every month had blown out of control, and they set up a private sponsorship scheme amongst friends and family for $10 a month, saying, "Hey, come on, help mum and dad out. They've got the school and it's blowing out of all proportion." So within a very short time, we had about 115 sponsors. So we had over $1,000 a month coming into the school, into our bank account, into this particular bank account that I'd opened, which is huge for a slum school in Kenya. For wages were about $80 a month each teacher. That was normal. So that worked for for 2 years. It worked actually, and we were over there in 2013 and discovered that, the whole thing was falling apart, basically. And we realised that we had been very naive and trusting of our friend, from the detention centre. And we had to get him out of the school, which proved to be really difficult. So we were in a situation, basically. We had all these kids, all the staff, and we needed our guy out. And along came Tony, my trusted Tony, who was working at the school while he was putting himself through university. And we had to trust him. We had to pull him aside and tell him, as our visa was up and we needed to leave, but we needed somebody to fight for us, to fight to get him out of the school. So we trusted Tony, and he took that on. And 9 months later, so we're talking early 2014, he called us one day and said, "Unfortunately, you're going to have to walk away unless you want to come back to Kenya and fight through our courts." This guy had, forged the school ownership into his name and all sorts of things. So we had to walk away from that. But I wasn't done with the school. My husband was. He's like, "I'm done," but I wasn't. And so, I put it to Tony that we start another school. And I realised by his response that he was the right person, because rather than jump into it and think, right, okay, how can I benefit from this? He said to me, "I'll have to think about it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And it sort of took me by surprise. And I realised then that he's genuine and it wasn't about him. And he left it for a couple of weeks, just left me hanging. And then he came back to me and he said, "Okay, Dee, I'll be interested in starting a school with you, but it's on my terms, not yours." He said, "You are not Kenyan. You don't know how to run a school. You aren't here and all the time, and I am." And he's got an education degree and all that. So it's okay. So basically the foot was on the other, shoe was on the other foot. I was the one doing as I was told. And to this day, the school's just incredible. And we've gone from, and the other thing, he started the school. He said, "Right, we start the school with 20 kids, little ones. That's it. None of this bringing them all in and mass. So we found a derelict old building in on rented land and painted it and got 20 kids. And from there, he's built it up slowly, the school roll. He wouldn't take any other kids until the beginning of each new year, which is January. The criteria for coming to our school was obviously they had to be from needy families, disadvantaged kids. We had orphans, we had kids with serious illnesses, HIV, hepatitis C, families who were really, really well below the poverty line. And that's how it worked. And so every year we'd get the new lot of little ones in, and the ones that started became the oldest kids. And that's how it went. And that we rented the land. Unbeknown to me, Tony had nightmares with our landladies who just wanted them off because they wanted to sell the land, and we had this contract, a lease on the land and everything. Anyway, finally, late last year, we managed to buy our own plot of land. So the school, we along the way, the derelict old building had to be pulled down, and we replaced it with a container school, shipping containers, because we knew that one day we really wanted to be in our forever home, and they could be lifted and moved. So we have this beautiful 2-story, 8-classroom school made out of containers, and it's got beautiful balcony around it. It's got a corridor. There's gardens and paths and all sorts of things. And so when we bought our land, a plot of land, I shouldn't really say, because Tony would kill me if he heard me say this. I was going to say we literally picked up the school and left, but it actually wasn't like that at all. We could pick up the containers and move them, but there was also a whole lot of other stuff. We dug a borehole. We've got power in there. It's a whole new set of toilets, beautiful toilets, decomposable toilets, a kitchen, because kids have food there, have a meal there, and all sorts of things. So it wasn't really just picking up the containers, but there was a whole lot of other stuff around it. So the school has been closed all year, and really, in the sense in that it took 7 or 8 months to get that school to a place where we could bring in kids. So he got the children from where we were placed into other schools, and they will join us in the new year, hopefully, unless they're already, quite settled in their new school. But where we are now, it's our forever home, and it's in a beautiful little rural community where there are no other schools. So we're going to have an influx of kids. So that's where we're at. And every one of my itineraries, we have to visit the school. It's the biggest part of my, why I do what I do, just because it's just so cool.
It's also really cool for your guests to be able to see like the immediate connection between their money when they're traveling immediately impacting a community and people who are local.
They make friends with the staff, and to this day they're in contact with them. It's just wonderful.